They had one job, and somehow they managed to completely ruin it. Fans were expecting greatness, but what they got was disappointment, marinated in deep-rooted regret. Every legendary villain has one thing in common. Fans don't expect them to be heroes. They don't even expect them to be likable. But they do expect them to feel like the character they fell in love with. Because here's the thing about Hollywood that nobody in a boardroom wants to admit. They don't rewrite villains out of creative vision. They rewrite them out of fear. Fear that audiences won't connect. Fear that the original is too dark, too complex, too uncomfortable for a 4-quadrant opening weekend. And every single time they do it, fans notice. Over the years, studios have rewritten, rebooted, softened, modernized, or completely reinvented some of cinema's greatest villains. And fans absolutely hated it. Today, we're counting down 10 villain versions that sparked outrage, endless online debates, and in some cases, nearly destroyed entire franchises. Number 1 might be the biggest villain downgrade Hollywood has ever created. I'm not grading these on box office performance. I'm not grading them on acting ability. I'm grading them on one metric only: the lasting damage each adaptation inflicted on the character's legacy. Because a bad casting doesn't just disappoint you for 2 hours. It rewrites how an entire generation remembers that character. The best villain adaptations: Heath Ledger's Joker, Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal. They don't copy the source material. They inhabit it. They find the psychological core of the character and build outward from there. The worst ones do the opposite. They take the surface, the costume, the name, the powers, and hollow out everything underneath. The pattern you'll see across all 10 entries isn't carelessness. It's a methodology of erasure. Hollywood doesn't always misunderstand these villains because they systematically strip them of the very qualities that made them terrifying. Some of these picks will completely catch you off guard, while others might be exactly what you expected. Either way, they're all forgettable. And here they are. Number 10. Lex Luthor, Batman v Superman. Let me start with the undeniable fact. Lex Luthor had always been calm, calculated, elegant, a genius who didn't need to raise his voice because his intellect was the weapon. Instead, this version felt erratic, hyperactive, almost like someone trying to imitate the Joker instead of becoming Lex Luthor. Here's what makes this uniquely disappointing from an analytical standpoint. Lex Luthor's power has never been physical. It's institutional. He wields corporations, governments, and information as weapons. He's the man who can't be punched because he's insulated by systems. Jesse Eisenberg's Luthor? He twitches, he stammers, he delivers monologues that sound closer to a TED Talk given by someone having a breakdown. The ideological threat, the man whose mind is more dangerous than any superpower, gets replaced by a tech mogul having an existential crisis. Fans didn't necessarily dislike the performance. They disliked that it barely resembled Lex Luthor. Many viewers couldn't connect this eccentric entrepreneur with the intimidating mastermind from decades of comics. Unfortunately, this wasn't the last time Hollywood misunderstood a legendary villain. Not even close. Number 9. Apocalypse. X-Men Apocalypse. Number 9 is not who you think. You might expect me to call this a bad performance. It's not. It's something worse. It's a wasted one. Oscar Isaac is a phenomenal actor. That's not in dispute. But Apocalypse, one of Marvel's most terrifying entities, was reduced to a blue figurehead standing on a mountaintop, delivering monologues at a volume that suggested he was trying to project across an ancient desert rather than through a theater sound system. Because here's the thing about Apocalypse that the movie fundamentally misunderstood. The character's terror doesn't come from his power. It comes from his certainty. He doesn't believe he's a god. He knows it. And that conviction, that absolute, unshakable, ideological certainty, is what makes him horrifying. He's not a villain who questions himself. He's a villain who has never needed to. The film gave us none of that. Instead of the slow, methodical dismantling of civilizations, we got a villain who mostly stood around while his subordinates did the work. The psychological weight of a being who has witnessed every human empire rise and fall and judged them all unworthy evaporated into a standard destroy the world plot. The original Apocalypse made you feel small. The cinematic version made you feel nothing. And that's the worst scar a villain adaptation can leave. Not hatred, indifference. Number 8, The Mandarin, Iron Man 3. This twist shocked everyone. Marvel spent months teasing the terrifying Mandarin. Fans expected Tony Stark's greatest enemy, a figure rooted in decades of mythology, a villain who represents everything Tony fears: power without conscience, technology without restraint. Instead, the terrifying terrorist leader was revealed to be an actor, Trevor Slattery. Audiences laughed, but many comic fans were furious. And here's why the anger ran deeper than a simple twist. If you think that twist was disappointing, wait until you see what happened to one of horror's greatest icons later in this list. Because the Mandarin twist didn't just disappoint, it invalidated. Years of anticipation disappeared in one joke. Marvel took their most culturally significant Iron Man villain and turned him into a punchline. The institutional damage here is specific. It told audiences that the source material's gravitas was expendable, that it could be sacrificed for a clever subversion. And here's what I find most fascinating. Marvel eventually tried repairing the damage years later with the real Mandarin in Shang-Chi. But first impressions last forever. The scar was already there. You can't unring a joke that an entire generation of moviegoers already laughed at. Let's pause for a second, because we're about to shift from franchise-defining disappointment to something more fundamental: the erasure of a villain's identity. Number 7, Freddy Krueger, 2010 Remake. The remake promised a darker Freddy. Instead, fans got a quieter, more restrained, less charismatic version. Here's what makes this adaptation's failure so analytically interesting. Robert Englund's Freddy was horrifying, but he was also theatrical. His wicked humor was part of the character's DNA. He didn't just kill you in your dreams, he performed it. That duality, the predator who enjoys the hunt, is what made him transcendent. He was a nightmare who knew he was a nightmare and found that funny. Removing much of that personality left fans feeling they were watching someone entirely different. The 2010 Freddy wasn't worse because he was scarier or less scary. He was worse because he was flatter. The psychological complexity, a child murderer who weaponizes the intimacy of sleep itself, was replaced with a more conventional slasher who happened to live in dreams. The scar here is subtle but permanent. An entire generation now associates Freddy Krueger with the remake's muted tone rather than Englund's operatic menace. And that is how you erase a legacy. Not through a bad performance, through a narrower one. We're just getting to the good part. Number 6, Doctor Doom, Fanfor Stick. Doctor Doom is one of Marvel's greatest villains. A dictator, a scientist, a sorcerer, a genius. Instead, the movie turned him into something barely recognizable. The iconic armor, gone. The commanding presence, gone. The royal arrogance, gone. Here's the thing about Dr. Doom that no adaptation has ever gotten right, and Fant Forstick got it the most wrong. Doom's terror doesn't come from his powers, it comes from his legitimacy. He's a head of state. He rules Latveria. He has diplomatic immunity. He can walk into the United Nations and dare someone to stop him. That's an institutional threat that no superhero can punch away. The film stripped every layer of that. Instead of a monarch who commands armies and dark magic simultaneously, we got a disfigured figure with vague motivations and a design that made fans wonder why this version was even called Dr. Doom. Keep that thread in mind. What happens when you strip a villain of their core identity? It's going to matter again at number 4, and the parallel will disturb you. Fans weren't simply disappointed. They wondered why this version existed at all. Number 5. Bane, Batman and Robin. Before Tom Hardy redeemed Bane, there was this. Instead of the brilliant strategist from the comics, the man who broke Batman, not just physically, but psychologically, who deduced Batman's identity and attacked him in the one place he felt safe, audiences got a giant bodyguard who barely spoke. He became muscle, nothing more. Here's what I find most fascinating about this failure. Bane's defining characteristic in the comics isn't his strength, it's his mind. He's the villain who figured out that Batman's greatest weakness isn't a physical vulnerability, it's isolation. Bane didn't just break Batman's back, he broke Batman's system. He exhausted him, manipulated him, wore him down methodically before ever touching him. Batman and Robin gave us none of that. One of Batman's smartest enemies became one-dimensional, a body in a mask. The ideological scar here is significant. It taught an entire generation of moviegoers that Bane is just a brute, a perception that took The Dark Knight Rises years to correct. If you're enjoying this countdown, drop a comment. Which villain do you think Hollywood ruined the most? I read every single one. And if you're new here, this is what Villainologist does. We go deeper. Subscribe because we're just getting started. Because number 1 still divides fans to this day. And the reason might surprise you. Number 4. Venom, Spider-Man 3. Remember what I said at number 6 about what happens when you strip a villain of their core identity? Here's where that thread pays off. Venom should have been terrifying. Spider-Man's most personal enemy, a creature born from Peter Parker's own discarded symbiote, carrying his memories, his strengths, his intimacy. That's what makes Venom horrifying. He knows everything Spider-Man knows. He is the dark reflection. Instead, he barely appeared. The storyline rushed Eddie Brock. The emotional payoff never landed. Fans waited years to see Spider-Man's greatest enemy, and most left theaters wanting far more. The psychological scar here is specific. Venom's terror is rooted in asymmetry. The villain who has access to everything you are while you know nothing about him. The film never gave audiences time to feel that asymmetry. Topher Grace's Brock was rushed into the symbiote with no space to build the obsessive, consuming hatred that defines the character. You can't shortcut psychological terror, and when you try, you get this. Entries are getting shorter. Tension is rising. Stay for number 1. Number 3. Jason Voorhees, Jason 10. Yes, some fans enjoy Jason X today. Cult appreciation is real. But when it released, Putting Jason in outer space felt ridiculous. Here's the thing about Jason Voorhees. His power is grounded. Literally, he's a force of nature rooted in the earth, in woods, in lakes, in the geography of Camp Crystal Lake. He's terrifying because he's inevitable, not because he's extravagant. Putting him in space didn't just break the character, it broke the genre. Instead of fear, many audiences laughed. The franchise had become self-parody, and while the film has earned a cult following since, initial reactions were overwhelmingly negative. The physical scar. Jason Voorhees, the slasher icon, became a punchline, and punchlines don't haunt dreams. Number 2. Emperor Palpatine, The Rise of Skywalker. Palpatine's return shocked audiences, not because he came back, but because many felt there wasn't enough explanation. Here's what makes this entry analytically unique. Palpatine's death in Return of the Jedi wasn't just a plot point. It was the ideological climax of the original trilogy. Darth Vader's sacrifice, throwing the Emperor into the abyss, defined the character's entire redemption arc. It was the moment that proved love could overcome the dark side. Bringing Palpatine back without proper build-up didn't just weaken a sequel, it retroactively diminished Vader's sacrifice. If Palpatine survived, then Vader's redemption, the emotional cornerstone of 6 films, was rendered partial, incomplete. We've reached number 1, and this version remains one of Hollywood's most criticized reinterpretations. Not because it was the worst performance, not because it was the worst film, but because it represents the most complete erasure of a villain's essence in cinema history. Number 1. The Joker, Suicide Squad, 2016. I want to make you a promise before we get into number 1. By the time I finish describing what happened to this character, you will understand exactly why every other entry on this list ranks below it. Because this isn't just a bad adaptation. This is the most comprehensive misunderstanding of a villain's psychological architecture ever committed to film. Few villains carry higher expectations than the Joker. He is the ideological mirror of Batman. Chaos versus order, anarchy versus discipline, the abyss versus the man who stares into it. His terror isn't physical, it's philosophical. He makes you question whether order itself is a lie. Then, audiences saw this version. The tattoos, the flashy gangster image, the neon aesthetic, the grills, the sports car. The entire presentation screamed performance where there should have been menace. Here's what I find most fascinating and most damning. This Joker wasn't built around psychological terror. He was built around aesthetic. Instead of a villain who unravels your understanding of sanity, viewers got a crime boss obsessed with Harley Quinn. The ideological threat, a being who exists to prove that anyone can break, was replaced by a gangster with face tattoos and a purple Lamborghini. Jared Leto's performance has defenders today, and that's worth acknowledging. The method acting stories, the commitment to the role, none of that is in question. But the first reaction from audiences was overwhelmingly negative. And here's why. Remember what I said at the beginning? The worst villain adaptations don't misunderstand the surface. They hollow out what's underneath. They keep the name, they keep the look, they keep the marketing, and they remove the essence, the very quality that made the character unforgettable. This Joker kept the name, he kept the laugh, he kept the purple, and he removed everything that made the Joker the Joker. For many fans, this simply didn't feel like the character. And when your character has decades of legendary performances behind him, Nicholson, Ledger, Hamill, Romero, anything less becomes impossible to ignore.
Now here's the thing about legendary villains that Hollywood keeps forgetting. They don't have to be comic accurate. They don't have to copy previous performances. They don't even have to be faithful to the source material, panel for panel. But they do need to understand why audiences loved the originals. Villains aren't remembered for flashy costumes. They're not remembered for expensive CGI. They're not remembered for the brands they sell merchandise for. They're remembered because they leave us uncomfortable, fascinated, sometimes even afraid. They leave permanent scars on their universes, on their heroes, and on us. When filmmakers forget that, fans notice immediately. And that's exactly why these 10 versions continue to spark arguments years after they first appeared. Look at the pattern across all 10. Lex Luthor lost his intellectual gravitas. Apocalypse lost his certainty. The Mandarin lost his mythological weight. Freddy lost his theatricality. Dr. Doom lost his institutional legitimacy. Bane lost his mind. Venom lost his intimacy. Jason lost his groundedness. Palpatine undid a sacrifice that defined a saga. And the Joker lost his soul. Each one stripped something essential, not cosmetic, essential. And that's the scar that never heals. So now it's your turn. Drop a comment. Which villain adaptation disappointed you the most? Did we miss one that deserves a spot on this list? I read every single one. And if you're new here, this is what Villainologist does. We go deeper. We dissect the masterminds. We explore what drives them. We classify the damage they leave behind. Subscribe, because we're just getting started. Until next time, remember, a great hero can make a movie memorable, but a great villain can make it legendary. And when Hollywood forgets that, the only thing they leave behind is a scar.